Hey everybody, welcome to the BRC show. I appreciate you checking us out. Excited to talk with head coach Steve Holm, Illinois State. Steve is a good friend of mine and someone that has been super successful as a head coach and as an assistant coach everywhere he's been. I'm really excited to get into this topic with him today and finding a place where you can play. I think it's super critical. And oftentimes, I think it's overlooked in an ironic way. It should be one of the main focuses in the process, but oftentimes it gets overlooked. So, Steve has been at Illinois State for 8 years, just finished his eighth year, I believe. And he was also at Sacramento State, Purdue, and he was also a big leaguer. So, played with the Giants and the Twins in the big leagues. So, has an awesome story. Started as a shortstop and played shortstop in college, was an All-American, and then transitioned to catcher. So it's kind of a unique story there as well. But we'll let him get into that. I'm excited to talk to him a lot more. And for anyone listening, make sure to check out the Parent Dugout, theparentdugout.com. A lot of cool stuff going on in there. So go ahead and check us out if you haven't already. But let's bring Steve on here and talk with him a little bit more. What's up, Steve? How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. And yourself?
Good, man. Appreciate you taking the time. I know we chat a lot, so it's good to officially throw everything on the record here, right, Steve?
Yeah, it's good to see your face. Just normally hear your voice.
Is it? You might just want to hear my voice, man. It's good to see you though, buddy. Appreciate you taking the time. I know your season has ended and it goes right into recruiting and the portal and high school classes and junior college. So it's a hectic time, man. But I want to first start, bud, with your background because I know a lot about you, but I want the listeners and the viewers to understand more about you. You have a super unique background, both playing and coaching, that really is substantial. The resume is very impressive, but can you just share a little bit more about your background and how you ended up at Illinois State?
Yeah, I grew up in California, and back then you could do the draft and follow thing. Obviously, a lot has changed, and so I was drafted out of high school as a shortstop and went to junior college because that was how you would do the quote unquote draft and follow at that point. And obviously didn't sign. Ended up going to Oral Roberts. Was there for my 2 years, and my senior year I came out and it was kind of hoping to get drafted. I'd like to keep playing, right? And I was back home in Sacramento, and the Giant Scout in the area of Oral Roberts called me and said, "Hey, where are you?" I said, "I'm actually in Sacramento." He said, "Perfect. We have a workout going on in San Fran. We'd love for you to come down and do this workout and go behind the plate." Like he had talked to me a little bit about during the season, and he had asked me if I'd ever caught during the season, and I knew big country, right? Like I was like, oh yeah, I caught a little bit in high school, and I had never caught. I just wanted a chance to play, but I had maybe caught a bullpen or two, so maybe I you know fudged it a little bit there. So I go down to this workout and literally haven't really caught it. Every guy obviously trying to light up the radar gun. I leave this thing and my thumb looks like it's got hit by a truck. It's all bruised. I'm walking out there like I missed my fair share of pitches here trying to catch, and I walk out, man. I can't believe that I told this guy I'd caught a little bit watching that performance. And there's this really big, tall guy that grabs me on the way out. His name's Dick Tidrow. And he ran, he basically was running the minor league system for them at that point in the draft and everything. And he comes over, and I'm like, man, this guy might tell me, like, quit lying to people until. And he grabs me and he goes, "Hey, that was really impressive." And I'm like, this guy watched the same thing, I was watching her. And he goes, "You showed incredible to go back there and do this in this thing." And I was like, well, I really appreciate it. And then lo and behold, that's who drafts me. And I get there, and
Crazy.
that same tall guy with the mustache is walking around, all of our minor league camp and everything. And he's like, "You remember me?" I said, "Yeah, I remember." He's like, "We took you because, the guts that you showed to go back there and do it." So I had to learn to catch. And they gave me the
Wow.
time. Like it's not something. It probably doesn't happen in today's game. They've eliminated levels and all that stuff, and because you don't just go back and start learning to catch very easily, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my first year in A ball or short season, I guess, Didn't really catch, obviously just worked on the side, went back the next year as a catcher, and then like got to know all those season ticket holders in the first row because that's where I was picking up most of the pitches, and then from there went to the long season the next year, and I somewhere around my third year I felt like adequate at it, and then that's when my batting average kind of started going with it a little bit too. I was never a great hitter, but um, it took its toll. Like I know this as a coach now, not necessarily as a 23-year-old minor leaguer, right? Um, Going back behind the plate and realizing like you're the worst player on the field, right? You're in pro ball. Everyone's the best player on their team, and they're putting you in a position you've never played. You're certainly not going to be very good. And that took its toll on you as a player. Like you would walk out
Yeah.
there with
Yeah.
very low confidence because you're like, I'm not very good, and I know this, and I'm playing against the best players I've ever played against. So, somewhere around the third year when I started adequately catching, I started kind of getting my feet underneath me, and then I went to. I got really lucky. I played for a guy named Lenny Sakata in A ball, and he treated me like the prospects. I was a backup catcher. He gave me the same amount of time, the same amount of attention, and all of those things. And without that man in my life, there's no way I ever played in the big leagues. But he
Mm.
taught me how to hit in the role that I was going to have. Um, I he told me, he goes, "Hey, if you ever make it to the big leagues, you're going to be a backup catcher." And I'm like, "Well, that's it's not really what I want to hear, right?" But ultimately, that he was correct. And he goes, "I'm going to teach you how to hit as a backup." Now, this man, he played shortstop. He was the last guy to play shortstop before Cal Ripken started his streak. So he was the
Okay.
backup shortstop for Cal Ripken. So obviously, not a lot of playing time there if you understand the
Yeah,
streak and everything.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
so, he had to play second and third, and he basically taught me how to hit as a backup, which is what he had to learn. And that allowed me to sit for 3 or 4 days, and there's some things that you do there that allow you to time up a fastball. And he's like, hey, you don't worry about the slider, like just see if you can, you get 4 at bats, see if you can time up 3 fastballs, put 2 of them in play the right way, and, see if you can go 1 for 4. And that worked. I took that same approach and turned it into a 12-year career. And but yeah,
Amazing.
it was basically because of him being able to do that. And then obviously towards the end of my career, I'm 32 at that point. Hips are bothering me back from catching
Okay.
all those things. It's the end. I know that, and I get released. And I had gotten a phone call 3 days before I got released. It was in the middle of summer of 12, and Reggie Christensen at Sac State, my hometown, had asked me if I, thought about coaching because I'd gone out there and hit with his team and then a couple other guys, that are from Sacramento playing pro ball. And I was like, yeah, I'd like to coach, but I'm still playing, and obviously as a catcher, AAA, foul tip away, and then 3 days later I get released. So, I call him back up, and I said, hey, um, Reggie, I might be a little bit more interested in that job than I was 3 days ago. So, anyways, he says, bring your resume and we'll sit down. And I'm like, don't have a resume, like kind of 32, never had a job, like if you want to call playing baseball a job, but that's the extent of it. So he goes, no, you just have to have a resume. And there's no chat GPT or anything. Like you can't just go on and say, print me out a resume of all my places I
Yeah.
played. So, I sat down and I, tried to create this resume and I hand it to him. I'm like, this is all I got, man. Like there's not a lot of meat to this thing. And he's like, 12 years as a professional, that's a lot. I'm like, there's nothing else. This is all we got here. So
That's great, man.
he hired me, and my wife, I had met her at Oral Roberts, and she's from St. Louis. So we took that job. I had offers to go back to pro ball, and so I kind of gave it a 1 year um, look at the college job, and I wanted to see what direction I wanted to go. And I was getting quite a few people reaching out to me when I was done, like, "Hey, come be in the manager of this or whatever in pro ball." And at the end of it, I was just like, you know what? I love sleeping in my own bed most of the year, which in pro ball I hadn't done in 12 years. And then I loved the impact you can make on the kids. There was one kid in particular that year, my first year coaching at Sac State, and he grabbed me, and I was a hitting coach when I first started there, and he said, "Hey, I need your help." They kind of told me at the end of the year last year that I should probably go and maybe not come back or whatever. And so I said, "Yeah, let's go." So we hit every day, and he was obviously at that point super willing to listen, right? And we did everything, and then, lo and behold, like he started off as a starter, and he ended up becoming the freshman of the year in the league. And
Mm.
I still have the picture on my phone. I took a picture of him when he was up there on the stage getting his his award, and he's standing there like this. But at that point, I was like, what, I'm going to stay in college baseball, and that's what I'm going to do. And so we ended
Crazy,
up
man.
we got a job at Purdue, because that was close to my wife. She's from St. Louis, so we wanted
Yeah.
to be in that area. And then Purdue, we were able to parlay that success into this job here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a super cool background, and we'll kind of dive into that as we go through this conversation. But I think it's just an interesting uh, journey that of experience. You said, with the resume, obviously, in 12 years of pro ball, you learn a lot, right? I mean, a lot more than when you're experiencing it. You're learning from a lot of coaches. You're around a lot of great players. I mean, even though you weren't a 10-time All-Star to make it to the big leagues, you're one of a very, very select few to ever make it. And so there's a lot to learn in that, man. And I think as we kind of dive into this conversation, Steve, you and I talk a lot away from the podcast on this, but and for anyone watching, feel free to throw your questions in the chat. If you don't have an account with YouTube, it's free. You can just quick sign up and throw your questions in the chat, and we'll get to those with Steve here. But just going into the topic here a little bit, Steve, and needing to find a place and learning how to find a place, looking for find a place where you can get on the field, right, where you can actually play. And ironically, in my role, I feel like I talk to a lot of people, and it isn't at the forefront of their thought process, and I think that is problematic. I think it should be one of the key focuses is what is your role going to be, and are you going to get opportunity to get on the field? And of course, at any level, D1, D2, D3, it doesn't matter. You have to earn it, and you have to go anywhere in this climate, this college baseball atmosphere, which is as good as ever. It's more talented than ever in history at all levels. And you have to go somewhere and you have to earn it. So that's a given. But Steve, I kind of want to jump into that aspect of this with you, and finding a place where you can play in the message to the players, the parents, high school coaches, club coaches, so that they can all hear your voice and how to look for that. But I want to just start with this simple question, man. Why is it so hard to find a place where players can get on the field early in play?
Um, I think a lot of it is like when you buy a house. Like if you pull up, realtor.com, and you're like, "Hey, I want to look for a house," and you have $300,000 to spend. We can equate that to your talent level, right?
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
start looking at the $400,000 house. How much cooler is that house than the $300,000 house, right? The $400,000 house has a pool. Maybe
Yeah.
it's got a really nice garage. The kitchen, your wife falls in love with the kitchen, right? I mean, that's how it works. And meanwhile, you're like, babe, like, we can only afford the $300,000 house with that really small kitchen, no pool, and maybe a one-car garage where the lawnmower goes, right? And I think that's what happens on the recruiting side
Yeah.
is on the recruiting side, you certainly are going to take phone calls like here, and somewhere in the middle. And like, for example, when the portal happens, I call a lot of these guys, and I say, "Hey, I just want to let you know I just saw your name, let's say an hour ago. Uh, we're interested. I want you to know that, but at the same time, I'm going to give you 48 hours. I'm going to call you back in 48 hours. At that point, your market has kind of materialized. There's going to be a couple like kind of throwing Hail Marys at you. There's going to be one or two schools up here that kind of don't fit the rest of the market, and then the rest of the market will materialize. If we're in that rest of the market, I'll talk to you in 48 hours. If you're still interested, if not, tell me to kick rocks, and we'll go find the guys that want to be here. But I think that's the hardest part is that one phone call that you get from the one that doesn't fit your market, right? And there's always one at the bottom, but they don't look down here. That everybody wants to go look at that $400,000 house that we're talking about, and you open yourself up to something that's not realistic, and then you chase that at all costs, and finally somebody gets drafted, whatever, and you go for that spot. Meanwhile, the market
Yeah.
had told you this is where you fit. You needed to spend $300,000 to buy that home, and now you're stuck in the $400,000 home that you can't afford, and it's a little big, but it's flashy though. You want to throw parties at your house because everybody wants to come over and hang out in your pool. Meanwhile, you're like, I can't afford the mortgage, and that's really what's happening.
Oh man, do I love that analogy, Steve. That's really good. I'm gonna use that moving forward. The reality is, and I tell guys this a lot. Sometimes the skill set is the trap because it doesn't mean that they can't play within that realm. Let's just use Division 1 as an example. If you have some tools that fit within that level of the Division 1 level, most of the time you're going to have some interest at that level. Then you go to the performance side and the development side to see kind of where that player really is from a performance standpoint and the ability to get on the field and help you win games. Because once a player is there, that's what you care about. I want to just touch on that really quick here, Steve. So let's just take a player that does get to your place, and we'll just use Illinois State as an example. Talk about the path that it takes for a player early on to get on the field at such a successful program as yours.
So we talk a lot to our players and our recruits about three things. It's crawl, walk, and run. When you get here, you tend to be crawling, right? And we are
Mhm.
looking for that guy. Crawl means like if you're a hitter and you get in our inner squads and they throw a fastball, you can make it go that way all the time. Obviously, laying out some breaking balls and things like that. But you can successfully get on the field and hold your own. Now, you start walking, that means maybe you're in the middle of the upper half of the lineup and all those things, and then the run is probably all conference. You're ready to sign, whatever that may be. Um, but we can't coach the walker like the runner, right? The runner has certain things that he can do at this point. The walker, we're still trying to, like I said, you get a fastball to hit, and you're in the 8 hole. We got to make sure it goes into play, right? The 3 hole's got to be better than that. And I think that, we've had quite a few kids at our prospect camps, and some people, that help us get those kids to our camp. Sometimes I tell them, like, hey, like, we want to know that kid because he might not fit at 18, but there is a point in the
Yeah.
potential 5 years, right? I mean, that seems like it
Yep.
keeps getting a lot of traction. At some point, year one might not fit. Year two, year three, at what point does that young man fit in our program? Maybe it's 20, maybe it's 23. We had a
Right.
kid that played in our program this year, and he was in a platoon situation. He came up with some big hits, won us some games, especially early on, and he had come to multiple prospect camps when he was in high school, and he really wanted to be a Redbird, and like I went back through my phone when we started recruiting him. I'm like, gosh, I know this name, and I found his name, and I'm like, oh, that's who it was, and he really wanted to be a Redbird, and he was a catcher at that point. And it was like, gosh, like he didn't look like a catcher out of high school, but that's kind of what he was. And he came to us as a fifth-year guy this last season. He had gone to multiple years of junior college. He had a red shirt in there at some point. He played at a different Division 1 and hit over 300. And we added him in August of last summer. Came to us, probably top 5 teammate on the team. I mean, unbelievable dude. Could really string the guitar. The guys love that, especially in the fall, right? But ultimately, like, great dude. And his time that he fit for us was at 23. Doesn't mean he couldn't have fit earlier, but that's
Yeah.
where the roster spots was. That's where the skill set lined up the most, and he won us baseball games. Had he come here out of high school, probably doesn't get that opportunity. Obviously, people don't hang around for 5 years of not playing, and wait for their fifth year. So, it never materializes. But I think there's a time and a place at the Division I level for most of the players. It's just how do you get there? Some guys come right out of high school because 93 with a slider is 93 with a slider. The next guy has to develop, and it's a lot like it is in pro ball. When I first signed in pro ball, they said 2,000 at bats and you'll be a big leaguer. That was kind of the number, right? That's 4 years of 500 at bats a year. And at that point, most people think that they have a chance to play in the big leagues. I was a backup catcher through a lot of the minor leagues. I was in there for 7 years. I get called up, and I'm like, I look at the numbers. It's like 16, 1,800 at bats. I'm like, they were right, and in the
Yeah.
minor leagues, people don't. There's a freak show. There's a Paul Skeens out there that just goes straight to the big leagues. But for the most part, you got to get good at A ball, then you got to get good at high A, then you got to get good at double A, triple A, and then you become a big leaguer. It's the same in college baseball now with the amount of age that's in there and the ability to play musical chairs in the summer to find those spots. I think that's how you got to get to your spot. There's a time and a place for everybody. And like I gave a speech on recruiting at one of the coaches conventions. It was called "Same Destination, Different Path." Like we used to
Okay.
take you. The same guy still plays Illinois State. It's just a different path to get there now
Yeah. Yeah.
because you can get reps on the way.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there that to dive into that we can unpack. And I love the insight on it. And I think what we also want to understand is like, what are your goals? For a from a player's standpoint, what are your goals short and long term, right? And I think, Steve, this is what I talk a lot about in my roles, but it's often the short term is viewed a lot, and I understand that, but often the long term is ignored. And again, that's problematic because if your goal, let's just say, is to play professional baseball, which is a lot of guys' goals, right? I mean, obviously, most guys that play, especially at your level, want to play professional baseball at some point if they can. Not everybody gets to, but it's a goal for a lot of guys. So then you have to look at the big picture, and if you're not getting on the field and you're not getting time, your chances are starting to diminish with your overall development in reaching that long-term goal. So I want to kind of get to this with you though, because I do think you talked about crawl, walk, run, and that takes patience. And we had Billy O'Connor, the head coach, on from Xavier last week, and he was talking about the patience it takes sometimes to get to that point where the player is on the field. It's tough, and that's really something that's also a challenge for a coach. How do you balance all that in your role, bud? When you talk about, seeing a player and knowing that they are going to help you, but knowing that early on it may just be spot sort of starts, maybe a pinch hit here and there, a defensive replacement just to get them in. Like, take me through that and what that's like, and just keeping them continuing to make them believe in what the long-term look on that is. How do you do that? How do you balance that with players?
So we've had, obviously the portal is a large part of your roster, whether it be portal or transfer, junior college, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Yep.
Everyone's trying to be old, and I think most people would agree with it. That's what's going on, unless you're outside
Yep.
like a prestigious academic situation. Um, but I think extremely important is the guys that grow up in your program. They're the ones that kind of carry that torch of the culture part, right? Hey, that's not what we do here, and this is how we do it, and things like that. So if you bring in, 36 or 34 portal guys, like it's going to be a mad chaos for perhaps the whole season. But you have to have those guys that will carry that torch for you. Let the new players know this is how we do it. And in order to do that, our center fielder Luke Stolgett played for us this year as a junior. Played every day. Hit kind of in the middle of the lineup. He came here out of high school as a freshman, and we gave him, I think it was 52 plate appearances or somewhere around 50. And those 50 at bats that he got that year were enough to make him feel comfortable as a sophomore. Now, he went out the summer, after his freshman year, had a lot of at bats, comes back and he played every day as a sophomore. Had like a 21 game hitting streak. We hit him in the 9 hole, kind of like protected him, right? And then this year he was in the middle of the lineup. Same thing with our we had a sophomore third baseman this year. So rewind 1 year, I think he had 49, plate appearances. And so we've kind of earmarked that 50-ish number as like, hey, if we can find a chance for them to get 50 at bats or on the mound, it's kind of that 15 to 20 innings. They come back as sophomores and comfortable. And the biggest problem, that you're talking about is like the freshmen that come to us, the skill set's not any different than the juniors. It's the mental part. Are they,
Yep.
are they clear minded? Are they comfortable? Are they confident? All of those things. Are they stressed out? Right.
Yep.
50 at bats has kind of been that number for us where they don't seem stressed out sophomore year. And so, you know, you certainly bring in a crop out of high school, right? That crop has gotten smaller and smaller for obvious reasons as the
Yep.
years go by. But you pick out those guys, you're like, hey man, I think this is a torch carrying guy. And he's the one you want to have on the field as a sophomore. And you want him to have that opportunity to beat out said junior college transfer that comes in, right?
Yeah.
The only way, in our mind, is the 50 at bats. You got to carve out 50 at bats. And, we had one kid this year that he's a two-way guy. He didn't quite get 50 at bats, but he also had 20 innings on the mound. And you're kind of
Pretty
like,
good.
well, we're going to have to use the two as, to get to 50, right? But ultimately, we feel that he's comfortable both ways, as a position player or as a pitcher next year. But that's kind of been how it happens because it's like I tell our guys like the game itself is better than any coach in the country. Like if you have the worst hitting coach in all of Division 1 baseball, but you give someone 200 at bats, and you have the best hitting coach over here, and the guy doesn't play at all, the 200 at bats trumps the hitting coach every time, and that
Yeah.
experience is what
I agree with that.
is
Yeah.
so valuable, and that's kind of where we're at. Is how do we get that freshman better? 50 at bats, 20 innings, whatever that is on the mound. They got to go to summer ball. Obviously, summer ball helps a ton, and there's a lot of we have tremendous options around here. But then they come back as
Yep.
a sophomore, their heart rate's much more flatlined at that
Yeah.
point, and they have
Yeah.
to succeed.
Yeah, man. Oh, I appreciate that insight too, because, without we've gotten so driven on training, and training is great. Like I'm all for the facilities and the hitting coaches and the pitching coaches and all that. But it has gone away a little bit where you see so many guys just training a lot and playing very little. And I think I think that's a little off balance in my opinion. But I think as we kind of like, as we look at the future of college baseball, essentially, like I think players just need to focus on early on, where do I have the opportunity to get on the field? And what is the risk in that? What's the risk reward? So if it's very high risk, and the reward is low, it's obviously really slim, like in my opinion, to like use that as an opportunity that you want to pounce on. To me, I feel like you have to have a good opportunity. You want to minimize the risk early, and you want to give yourself a chance to get on the field early, because you know how this is, Steve. If you see guys in the portal that are in the portal for the third time, and you're looking at them and they have 2 innings under their belt in their college career, their options just become very slim with what they can choose from, because they're just not getting on the field and they haven't proven anything. So you kind of start diminishing your player value. And I want to take one of the questions here, because I think it's a really good question, and I think it kind of flows with this a little bit. But when you watch a player, Mark asked a really good question here. So when you watch a player for the first time, what's the one thing that immediately separates a recruit from everybody else? When you're just talking in general here in recruiting, what are some of the things that you notice that stands out to you?
So if when a kid comes and sits in my office with his family, we're in recruiting visit. I tell them every time I say that I want you to love baseball because if you come here as a freshman, what I promise is going to happen is at some point in the first 5 weeks or whatever, you're going to call home And I point to the mom and dad right there. I was like, he's going to call you guys and say, I am the worst baseball player in this program. What? What? And it happens, and it happens every single time. I tell the kid, I go, at this point in the conversation, I tell the kid, and right now, and I point at him, you're saying, well, he's not talking about me. 100% I'm talking about you. You right there. You will call home. And I
Me?
said that you're used to playing 16U, 17U, whatever it may be. We play 23U here, and you're going to be 18.
Yep.
Those guys are going to be more physical. They're going to be way more experienced. They're going to have a way better heart rate. They're going to be able to manage their life, meaning they ate lunch before they came to practice. They actually got their homework done, like all of those things. They're going to be really good at going to college. You
Yep.
are not. And you're going to call home and you're going to say, I'm the worst player in the field. And at this point, the parents are sitting there and I'm like, when he calls home, I want you to ask him if he's going to class. I want you to ask him what kind of effort he's put in the weight room. I want you to ask him if he's being a good kid off the field, because that good kids are good teammates. And then lastly, I just want to make sure he's going to practice on time and it's getting
Yeah.
extra work in. And I tell him, like, if you're as a kid are able to say, no, mom, I'm acing my classes. I'm working my butt off in the weight room. I'm being a great kid, great teammate, and I'm showing up early, getting extra swings in. At that point, it's just a slump. But if you
Yeah.
answer no to those things, you know what it is? That's who you are.
Yep.
You are the worst player on our field. And you will be, because you're not doing any of the other stuff that it takes to not be the worst player. But at some point, every single freshman goes through it. And I call our freshmen in about somewhere around 4 weeks after they've been on campus. So, school starts middle of August. So let's say middle of September. And, it's no baseball. It's like, hey, how you doing? How's your grades? How's your mom, dad? Your sister's off at whatever school. How she plays volleyball. How's that going? And this year we had a kid. He goes, stop. And I go, what? He goes, I called home yesterday. And I called home about what? He goes, I told my mom I'm the worst player in the program. And I laughed. And I go, well, that is the first thing you've got right this week. I said, right now you are. And he goes, I know. And I mean, it was apparent to everybody, right? So, I talked to him. I said, what did she say? And he goes, she asked the same questions that you said, and I said, what were your answers? He goes, I'm fine. And I go, then it's just a slump, buddy. Like, I mean, that's just where it's
Yeah.
at. Like, you're going to
Yeah.
get out of that. And I think that's the piece on the recruiting side. What do you look for? Is we are signing you up to be our worst player. And if you are our worst player, you better really love baseball. And you better really love to be able to hit in the cage and stuff like that, because the 23U part is real. And those guys have had a lot of swings in the cage in the last 5 years when you were playing video games with your buddies at 16 years old, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's the part that, to circle it back to that question, what am I looking for? I want to look for the guy that you can tell he loves playing. The guy that dives because he just loves diving and fielding a ground ball. That's the guy that's going to be successful when he's calling home saying, Mom,
Yeah.
Dad, I'm
Yeah.
the worst player in said program.
I like that a lot, man. Such good stuff there. I want to get to another Mark's question. So, given your experience with your unique path to coaching, what would you suggest to a student athlete to study or major in if they wanted to coach?
Um,
That's pretty
I
open,
don't know.
right, Steve?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've had the unique opportunity. I've been to multiple different schools, and there are different types of schools. Like Purdue is a very, very prestigious academic situation. Um, Not that Illinois State's not, but we're not getting the same type of student that is going to Purdue. And I think that what I've always told our recruits is you got to go to not just a baseball situation where you can thrive, but also an academic situation where you can thrive. So, meaning if you have SEC, let's say SEC taste on the baseball side, but you fit at the lowest level Division 1, you will not thrive. It's the same thing academically. Like, we have kids in our program that work their tail off to get a 3.0. And those are my favorite students because they're overachievers. we have all other guys that are 4.0 and they breeze through the 4.0. And I'm like, I don't even know if you're trying, but that doesn't mean they're working hard just because they're getting the
Right.
4.0. Same thing with the baseball. Like you could send an SEC talented kid, let's say he throws 98 miles an hour and he's got a yacker slider. You send him into a lower level, like, was that really good for him? Probably not, right? He's not going to
Right.
really develop. The
Yeah.
same thing academically, to where the question was, what if he really wanted to coach? The the, the young man has to thrive, so he's got to be doing something that he really loves. That might be history, because you might be a high school teacher, right? And that's how you
Yeah.
coach. But in order to thrive, you got to be thriving in what we call it our pie. Those are our four pieces. That was what I mentioned earlier. Are you a good kid? Are you working your butt off in the weight room? Do you go into class and you're getting good grades and you're achieving what you're supposed to achieve? And then also, are you showing up to baseball? So to thrive, you have to do all four things at a high level. And I think academically, like I'm not an idiot, but I wouldn't want to be in astrophysics, right? So it's got to be something that is of interest to you, because if I'm in
Yeah.
astrophysics and I can get the right grade, right? I can study enough, but if it's not interesting to me, I don't know how thriving I'm going to be. But if I find what's interesting to me, and then I want to learn the next thing, and the next thing is, it's like reading a book. So I think with your degree, it's got to be something that you feel like, I can thrive in this. I'm not just doing it because I want to be a coach later on. I'm doing this because this is of real interest to me. It's like picking up a book, right? For the
Yeah.
most part, we can all read. Who's going to finish the book first? Probably the one that's most interested in that book.
Yes. Yeah. Great way to say it, man. And I think as we kind of wrap up here, I want to get to one other question. Then I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at you here with some fun questions to finish off here.
Can't
But
wait.
um, some good ones, probably ones that you haven't answered before. But what's one big misconception parents have about the college baseball recruiting process today, and how can families avoid wasting time or money on it? Very loaded question, but it's a great question.
Um, I think that you got to realize that, like I have friends that their kids are going through these recruiting processes. That that's about how old I am. Some of them are, they're playing softball, they're playing soccer, some are playing baseball. They call me and say, hey, like, I'm trying to guide my daughter through this. What do you got for me? And what I tell them is, you got to find someone that you really trust, whether that might be your high school coach, could be your travel organization, whatever, and have the dad or the mom sit down with that person and say, hey, where does my son or daughter fit? Does that mean they're SEC? Does that mean they're getting drafted? Does that mean it's a D3 junior college? You tell me honestly where they fit. And once that person tells you where they fit, then you go, okay, let's just say it's a mid major and you live in my area. So you're like, okay, give me 4 or 5 spots that you would be interested in going to school. Go to their camp. Go to their camp and see where exactly you fit. If they start recruiting you, you probably fit. If you go to 5 of those camps and you don't get one phone call or anything like that, maybe you don't fit. I don't think you got to drive all the way to Georgia and play in a tournament in order to figure out where you fit. For the most part, high school kids need to kind of go within about a 5 to 6 hour radius of their home. The mom doesn't really want them living in California and going to school in Florida. You know, you're flying across
Man.
200 schools that you can go to. So for the most part, you got about a 5 or 6 hour radius, depending on where you live. But that's about where the high school kid no longer thrives, right? Unless it's a prestigious academic situation, they need to be able to thrive. They thrive in their own culture that they've grown up in. A northern kid doesn't go to the south, and vice versa, right? So you got that 4 or 5 hour radius. You find those spots, and that's the misconception I think most people forget is, out of high school, you got to go where close enough, but in the right direction. Now, once they hit the portal and stuff like that, a 22-year-old, they can go across the country. At that point, they're old enough, mature enough. They've made enough life decisions that they can go live on their own,
Yeah.
2,000 miles away. It doesn't. But out of high school, the biggest misconceptions to me is when, like, Illinois gets, like, rated on the recruiting side, and I see
Yeah.
kids going, 1,000 miles, in the wrong direction, and like we sit there and we write those names down, because I'm like, come June 1st, after his freshman year, we'll see him on that little portal thing that NCAA has. They're just too far away, and most 18-year-olds are just not ready for that much. So that would be my misconception. I think that people chase, stuff that's way too far away, and you need to stay closer to home, especially out of high school.
Interesting, man. It's an interesting take. Yeah, I appreciate the thought on that, and I do think as a player, you really need to evaluate where you're at on that. It's an interesting conversation, something that definitely needs to come up when you talk about the location of the school and being ready for it. I think that's a big piece of it. So I appreciate that insight. Good insight there. So all right, buddy. So we're gonna finish off with this. We're gonna finish off with the kitchen sink and then your MVP. But we'll get to that. But let's just start with this one, man. So very easy one here. What is your favorite sport either to watch or participate in or whatever away from baseball?
Favorite sports. When I was 4, I was on one water ski, so I loved
Oh,
water skiing growing up.
wow. Crazy, man.
I lived.
One you were
We
down to
lived on
one
the
water
river in
ski?
Sacramento. We had a boat. Water skied all the time. Obviously, baseball started getting in the way of that at a certain age, but
Yeah.
I loved water skiing. If it scrolls across my algorithm, I click on it and then it just keeps popping up. But like it pops up on my Twitter sometimes if I'm on the bus for a 4-hour road trip. It's freezing cold and I'm watching water ski videos. So there you go.
That's awesome, man. All right, that's good. I wouldn't have guessed that one, man. Water skiing's great. We'll have to get together and hang out sometime and do some boating stuff. All right, so second one, best mound visit story from your big league career.
Um, okay, it's big leagues, but it's in the minor leagues at this point.
Okay.
Brian Wilson, obviously Fear
Yeah.
the Beard. A lot of people know this
Yep.
guy. So he had been up in the big league camp, and I think I'm a year away from the big league. So we're gonna fudge this story into your big league career part. Um,
Okay.
he just gets sent down from big league camp, and he ends up going up that year, and a year or two later he's an all star. So I'm calling pitches, and we're in we're in the San Francisco Giants complex in Arizona. So all the brass are there watching this guy because they know he's going to be a dude. And I call fastball, I call curveball, slider, chain. He just keeps shaking. So finally, timeout. So I go out there. What are you going to throw? And I called every pitch. He goes, I want to throw a knuckleball. And I'm like, what? And he goes, literally, he just looks you in the eyes like this. He goes, I want to throw a knuckleball. I'm like, all right, dude. So I go back down there, and he
Awesome.
literally throws it, and he could throw it. And he throws this thing, and I mean, this guy throws 100 at this point in his life. So I mean, he's throwing this thing. It's like 85 miles an hour. My glove's like this, like right, and it boom, it hits me in the shin guard, bounces off. The guy goes to second base or whatever, and I go out there, I pick it up, and I like go back. I'm like, I don't know what to say at this point. And I played with him before, so I flipped the ball back to him. He goes, "My bad, dude." And I just walked back. And the pitching coordinator at the time, like his name's Burt Bradley. He lives about an hour from us. I still see him all the time. He comes up to me and he goes, "Never let him throw a knuckleball again." I go, "Burt, how about you never let him throw a knuckleball again? Like, why are you getting mad at me? Like, we both had the same amount of say in that." And so Burt goes over there and rips him for throwing knuckleballs. But yeah,
Oh my
he
gosh, that's great, man. That's great.
so
That's great. I like that story. Good. That's a good story, Steve. All right, so let's get to the next one. All right, so favorite big league teammate. Do you have anyone that sticks out when you think of like, man, this guy was awesome to play with?
the guy that I would say was John Bowker. Um, San Francisco Giants came up with him. He lives in Sacramento. So we would work out together in the off season. We would both end up getting called up at the same year. We probably saw each other 300 times or 300 days a year at that point. So that was the guy. Like it seemed like we always got sent down at the same time, and we would live in a hotel, or an apartment together at some point. And so he would be my guy. But one story about him, like John had a different type of agent. Like I had a small agent, and John's agent was the guy that would do a lot of things for him. So we would go down. And I was like, "Hey, call your agent, make sure he gets an apartment complex for us, and then I'll just split the bill, right?" So that would happen, and we were in a complex in Fresno, and the agent called John. He said, "Hey, you just got to put the power on in your name." So John's like, "All right." So he calls and he puts the power on, and he's on the phone and he's like, "No, this is the," and they kept asking him. He's like multiple times. He's like, "No, this is the address." So I was like, "What is that about?" He's like, "They wouldn't take the address to the apartment complex." So I move on. Like 4 weeks later, he gets the bill and it's for $100,000. And he's like, I go, first of all, I ain't splitting that bill with you. Like, there's no way. And I say, that's on you. And he calls. He had turned the entire apartment complex on in his name. So that's why they kept arguing. He
Oh,
turned the whole thing. So the apartment complex now is mad at us because they're trying to split up a bill for X amount of units. And he had this $100,000 bill. And I was like, all right, I'm
awesome.
out. Like there's no way. So he's still my favorite teammate. But
That's
that'd
great,
be my
man.
guy.
I like that one. I like that. And the last one we're gonna go to here is, well, we already know it. So something that you're really interested in that most people don't know. I mean, you already touched on it a little bit, but is give us something else. Give us something away from water skiing.
Okay, so when I was little, growing up in Sacramento, we were 2 hours from Tahoe, and my mom is from Idaho, so I actually raced snowmobiles growing up, and if it worked, like I would love to,
Wow.
be able to do that. My brother still he lives in Idaho, so when we go up at Christmas time, like he has snowmobiles and stuff like that, and we go
Wow.
riding and different kind of riding than what you're used to in in your neck of the woods where it's flat and trails and stuff like it's mountains and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I really do like that, but obviously somewhere around January 10th, I kind of have a 7 day a week job there until June or so, so not a lot of snowmobiling happens, but I'm very interested in that.
Wow, crazy man. I like that. All right, buddy. Good stuff there. Learned a little bit about you. Last one for the day, and then we'll wrap up. Who is your most valuable person in your baseball journey, your baseball life?
um I think it's got to go back to who I said, Lenny Sakata. Like he was my manager 2 different years in San Jose, both years. I got 2 tours of duty through high A. But ultimately, it would be him. Like I said, without him, I never played in the big leagues. But it was because he treated all of his players like they were that top prospect. I was 17th round senior signed for $2,500. Got a plane ticket to go to Arizona. That's about it, right? He was the guy that taught me how to treat a player. So we have guys on our team, and we have obviously guys that are going to play in the big leagues, and some guys that aren't. But that's the model that you always remember as a coach is like you got to make time for everybody on your roster, not just the
Yeah.
guy like Braden Bakes hit 393 and broke the school record for hits in a single
Yeah.
season. Like he's important, obviously. We like that guy, but so's the other guy because at some point in my career, I was Braden Bakes when I was at Oral Roberts, but I was
Yeah.
also the guy who at the end of the year they told to hit the portal because they didn't renew my contract
Yeah.
at certain points, right?
Yeah.
So I think Lenny would be that guy because he treated all of us the same way.
Yeah, I love that, Steve. I love all the insight today. I love the getting to know you a little bit, man. I didn't know the water skiing and the snowmobiling. Hey, man, like that's a lot of fun stuff you and I have interest in, and but I appreciate your time, buddy. I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's busy. It's a lot going on right now, but thanks a lot for catching up with me on here, and obviously we'll be talking soon, bud.
No, I appreciate it. But can you water ski? Let's you're mentioning.
So
I
yeah,
want to
okay,
know.
all right. So you want to flow down this road? All right. So
Yeah, I
I
do.
would say I steer clear of that type of stuff, but I do like activity on water is a good way to say it. It wasn't
Like
something that I did a lot growing up.
the tube. Are you a tuber?
Yeah, so I'm a big so I like to do anything behind it that I feel like I'm more in control of.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I would
Like
put it
right
in the
now, I'm
tubing
running the
category. Yeah.
podcast and you're the guest here, so the people understand how this is working. So you can tube. Can you wakeboard?
No, I mean,
No
it's just
wakeboarding.
something I've never done. I maybe could if I put some attempted it more. I guess I just have never
Yeah.
done it.
So you like a day on the boat more than anything?
Yeah, I do, man. I do. I like
Pontoon
time
boat,
on the
or are we
water.
talking ski boat here?
No, 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 no. We're talking speedboat, man, like the great
Oh,
outdoors,
really?
right? Jet boat.
Oh, John Candy. Yeah,
Yeah, there we go.
with the
That's
pipes hanging out
exactly
the
it.
back of the boat. That's yeah, that's
Uh,
the real
we're
McCoy.
not I'm not quite there yet, but, definitely more of a speedboat guy than, the cruise the water at,
Than
5
the
miles an hour,
pontoon.
so
Okay,
yeah. I
gotcha.
mean, I have
Good.
little I have daughters and little girls like you do, and so they like to bounce off the back of it and swim around, and that's my activity on the lake, man, but,
Do you
I
pull
would
them
like
on
to
it
get
too?
you on one I wanna get you on one ski up at my place
Okay.
sometime, man.
Yeah, I
Deal?
can't wait. Yeah.
Deal?
No, we love
Alright,
going to Wisconsin.
there
Yeah.
we go, man. There we
We've
go.
been going to the Dells a lot. Like our girls are
Okay.
perfect age for the Dells, and but they love the water. They tube. They they're in on that. So
We'll set it up, buddy. I owe
gotcha.
you
Yeah,
one. Thank
yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Have a
You
great day,
do.
buddy.
You
We'll
owe me a
talk
lot.
soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
All right.
Hey, for for everybody here listening and watching the Parent Dugout, go check it out, parentdugout.com. We have Dirt from the Dugout live on there, Baseball Recruiting Confidential live. And you can ask me and Ravi anything, direct access to us to shoot us your questions, clubhouse conversations, engage with other parents on your journey and learn from them. It's a real community. So check it out, theparentdugouts.com. It's a great platform. Come check us out. Appreciate you listening.